the hills and valleys. I saw the great things I was doing as a young reporter in high school. And then I saw, going to the military and becoming a single parent and being on welfare and even working at a restaurant when I was pregnant and slipping and falling while I was pregnant. And no one helped me.
So when you look at your life today, did you ever think it would be like this?
I went to talk to some students at the juvenile home. You grew up in a 2-parent household and probably on the west side of Kalamazoo, and your parents were professionals and blah, blah, blah. You went to college. And I was like, everything you said was wrong.
Is there like a point of like your life or your upbringing that makes you feel like you want to be in service and in recognition and a leader?
You can be born in a circumstance that you can't control, but there are consequences for your actions that you can't control.
Have a circumstance that you're born into, but the minute your eyes open to something, there's no going back. You know that if you just make it through this period in time.
A lot of times we don't see things as learning experiences. We see them as failures, and they're not. So you can whatever you create yourself to be. Nobody's holding you back but yourself.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Sandbox Collective Podcast, hosted by Leilani Wells. I'm a creative director and content marketing strategist, and this show is for the builders, innovators, creatives, and entrepreneurs creating in real time. Come tap in, get inspired, and move right into action. Welcome to the Sandbox. Let's play.
We're rolling, aren't we? All right.
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay. Well, hello. Hi. Welcome to the Sandbox Collective. I'm Leilani Wells, your host, and I'm really excited. We have Sonya Hollins with us today. She's the founder and executive director of the Merze Tate Explorers.
Yes.
And I met her just recently and was highly impressed and really excited to get to know her more. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear about your journey with the Merze Tate Explorers. I'd love to hear from like your perspective and your thoughts on the Merze Tate Explorers for those who don't know about them. Like, what are the Merze Tate Explorers before we dive into everything?
Right. Yeah. So Merze Tate, people, sometimes you see the name, you don't know how to pronounce it. Some people say Merze or Mertz Tate. But Merze Tate was someone I learned about when I was a reporter at the Kalamazoo Gazette. So I love history. I love anything dealing with local history, Black history. And so whenever I write stories, I try to find some kind of angle that had a historic, viewpoint to add to my stories. Sometimes my editors wouldn't like it, but every now and then it would hit and be a hit. So one particular thing I did was a story on the first African Americans of Western Michigan University. So I wrote a series of stories, like the first Black librarian, the first Black instructor, the first Black student. And they gave me this list, and one of the names was Merze Tate. And I had never heard of Merze Tate. I had attended Western Michigan University, never heard of Merze Tate, didn't know if it was a man or a woman, and learned that Merze Tate was the first African-American from Western to get a bachelor's degree.
Wow.
So she wasn't the first graduate, because the first graduate came out like in 1908 or something like that. But she graduated in 1927 with the bachelor's when they changed the school from Western State Teachers College. It was Western Normal School. Okay. Because normal school is where people learn to be teachers. Then it changed to the Western State Teachers College. Okay. And when it changed to that, she was the first graduate under that name, but she received a bachelor's degree at that point. And she had the highest academic record in the school's history.
Wow.
At that time, like 64 A's and like 6 B's or something. But even with that, she could not get a job teaching in Michigan because she was Black. And so Dr. Waldo, who was the president of Western at the time, and a few other deans, helped her get interviews in different places. So one of them was St. Louis, I think one was in Cincinnati, and then one was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that school was called Crispus Attucks High School. And the interesting thing about Crispus Attucks is that it was founded by the Ku Klux Klan because they did not want Black students going to school with white students. And around that time, that's when high school became mandatory. So you got to realize before that time, students went to school to a certain, grade, and then they went to work. Yeah. They went to work. So now this whole concept of students finishing high school came about, and they're like, yeah, we really don't want Black students and white students at that age together. So they created Crispus Attucks High School. And Merze Tate was the first history teacher for that high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And so her history is pretty interesting because, I mean, Crispus Attucks High School, people who are into sports know that school because their high school basketball team went on, I think, to win a national tournament, and it was like a big deal. But Merze Tate started the history club and took students to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Niagara Falls during the 1930s. And when you think about someone doing that back in the 1930s, I mean, it was close to the Depression era. It's a single woman who's taking these students in her travel club basically across country. And her desire was, I want these students to see something besides just being maids and servants and drivers and chauffeurs. How do I expose them to this world I'm teaching them about? And she, one Easter Sunday, they got on the train. The church sent them off, and they went to Washington, D.C., and, because it was segregation, the girls stayed at what was called the Whitlow Hotel, and the boys stayed on the campus of Howard University. But they got around. They went to the White House. They went to the Department of Treasury. So I was just fascinated with her story and how she was taking these kids, all around, boys and girls. And in addition, it was like, who's paying for all this? Like, these kids didn't have money. And so it just really made me more curious about her. And so I asked Sharon Carlson, who was the archivist at the time at Western, and she said, yeah, Merze Tate left $1 million to Western. I was like, what? I know, like, where did she get her money? Like, now it got interesting. Like, and then she was the first Black graduate of Oxford University. So I started learning about all these things. And she said, there's a box, of scrapbooks that were, left here after her death. You're willing to look through them if you want. And I saw those books and I was just captivated. I was like, oh my gosh, this lady had pictures of her in India with the prime minister. She was like all over the world taking photographs. And I'm like, who was this woman? And so my initial thought was I want to write a book about her because there was no book out about her. No one knew about her. And she was from Blanchard, Michigan. She was a Michigan native. Wow. And as I started doing more research and looking through the pictures and scanning them, that picture of the travel club just kept coming back to me, of these kids standing with her and this little sign that said travel club. And I was like, I would love to start a travel club for girls, where girls would learn about different women and careers and just really explore this world and use journalism as a tool. Because it's one thing to take students on a tour somewhere, but to say you're a reporter, so you have access to interview people, you have to write about it, remember what you're writing, be able to articulate it on video to sum up what you're writing. So it wasn't just like, let's have fun and travel. My whole desire was teaching them how to find their voice and how to use their voice and how to share stories that, particularly about African-American women, that many of those girls had never even heard of. So, we kind of started in 2008 as a grassroots organization. Yeah. And I had an article in the paper and said, you want to join the travel club? And 12 girls showed up.
Article in the paper, remember those?
Yeah, the newspaper where people actually read the newspaper. And 12
How many
girls,
showed up?
12 girls.
Oh, wow.
So we were at East Hall, which is now the new Heritage Hall on campus, but that was where Merze Tate originally took her classes, was in that building, originally East Hall. So we met in there, and Sharon Carlson let the students see the pictures. We just started talking about Merze Tate's history, and it really let the girls decide what they wanted this whole organization to be about. And, we had like $0. So it was there like, hey, you tricked us. I thought we were traveling the world. Like when we're traveling the world, as we're learning about different things. Yeah. And we literally just started going to places in the community that they had never been before. For instance, we went ice skating on campus at Western.
Nice.
And I would just go to places and say, I don't have any money. We're a new organization. We don't have a nonprofit 501c3. We just want to give these girls different opportunities and experiences. And people opened up their doors. We went, like I said, ice skating. The museum would do great things with us. The ladies' library, let them, go in there. We had tea and talked to some women in there. We met Dr. O'Larion, who was the first Black woman president of K College. So we started interviewing these different people and different women. We went to Barn Theater, interviewed the director there, one of the women who was co-founder. So they were learning, we're going to these places, but we have the power of the media to tell the story. I know one of the cool things that we went to when we first started was Greg Jennings had a football camp at Kalamazoo Central. And our girls had the big cameras because we were using cameras from Public Media Network, and they came on the scene. People were like, oh, who are those girls? And they just felt so empowered to be interviewing, all the people who were there and helping out and interviewing Greg Jennings and his wife. And you could just see the confidence that these girls were able to develop and to have as they were, like they had the power.
Yeah.
And that's something that, it came out of it just, wanting to share more about Merze Tate's story, but at the same time, giving girls that power that Merze Tate had. She was a very dynamic woman who was an educator, an author. She had stocks, that's how she got most of her money. So she was very diverse in the things that she did.
This is incredible. And nobody really knows about her.
Knew about her at that point.
Well, I mean, how well is she known right now? I mean, I heard about her through you, know, and
yeah, the word is getting out.
Yeah, you're spearheading this. It seems like from the beginning to now.
Yeah, it was interesting because when I first started, no one had ever heard of her, and I was really beating the drum for her, particularly on Western's campus, because this woman gave $1 million. There was a scholarship in her name through the Honors College that's given out still every year. And no one had really recognized her. And so it had to be about 2021 when I received a call that they said they're naming the Merze Tate College on campus after her. So that was a great moment because it's like now finally the college is recognizing her. Another person had written a book about her. There are more articles and books being written about her. So it's like this journey has been not only fulfilling for me, having these girls live her legacy, but at the same time now more people are sharing her story and celebrating her.
You're amazing. That is incredible that you took that and you just took it to another level and got deeper and deeper with it. And now, does she have kids or grandkids and great grandkids and all of that get to enjoy all of this, the work that you started and that everyone else is now making books and doing all these things and the Merze Tate Explorers? I mean, do they get to just celebrate her now? And
so that's an interesting thing, which is one reason why I really loved her story and wanted to share it, because she never had any kids.
Wow.
She never had any kids. She never married. Her siblings didn't have kids. She had one brother who had a son, and he got hit with a rock on the playground when he was like, I think in elementary school. And he, back then you would go home for lunch. He went home to take a nap and never woke up. So he probably had a concussion, but they never had any kids. And so everybody that she knew was like a distant relative, as she got older. When she was in 10th grade in Blanchard, Michigan, their school burned down. And they just graduated all the students. And Merze Tate, being the youngest in that class, was valedictorian. And she was the only black student in that particular class. But she wanted to go to college, and you needed 2 more years of high school. So she ended up moving to Battle Creek, where she had relatives who lived there. But she worked as a maid in someone's home to pay for her room and board. And she finished high school at Battle Creek Central with all A's and ended up going to Western Michigan University, where she did amazing things and knew every president from Dr. Waldo all the way up to Dieter Heineke, because she kept a very tight relationship with the administrators all the years that she was alive. He even went to her funeral when she died.
Wow. Right. Well, let's talk about the work you're doing now because of just who you are, and then also stemming from how deep you went into learning more about her and just the journey with that. Because for one, to me, you are doing legacy work just like she did. You're a legacy worker. You're a legacy builder. I shared with you the other day, I believe I was talking to you. Yeah, I did share with you the other day that, what's interesting about the event where I met you at is that event is going to go down the line in generations. They're going to open, the materials, these girls, and they're going to remember this and talk about it. This is going to be going, national and international, and it's going to be part of, so Merze Tate, she was a legacy builder, but you're really carrying out her legacy, and I think that's just such an amazing thing when you think about, you do some work, but what's the ripple effect of the work you're doing, right? there is a thought I was having the other day about, we think about sometimes things as so big. We're like, okay, we've got to impact 1 million lives, you know what I mean? And you probably heard a bunch of, you have that journalist background where everything's so grandiose, like grand and big. But then some people, they just get really focused on one person. And then that one person turns into something so big because that other person goes out and does something, right? And she was focused on the girls, but then you're a person who found her and focused on her, and then all this stemmed out of it. You know what I mean? And so these grand, big things can come out of something, and it just is a whole beautiful legacy of just hope and dreams and inspiration and activism and change. I'm excited. So I want to hear more about this journey. So this book I have in my hand, you so graciously gave to me. I really appreciate it. It's amazing. I'm going to give it to you to hold while we talk about the project that you just recently did. So I was invited, and I feel like it was such a blessing. I was so grateful to be invited to get some behind the scene footage with a whole team of people on the project for the Merze Tate Explorers. Talk about that and how that came from the book and all that with the girls.
So you were on our set of Driving into History, an exhibition that we're starting that really highlights history of Black women. And what made it so interesting was that Janine at the Black Arts and Cultural Center, who's the director, she said, do you have any ideas for March for Women's History Month for 2020, 2026? I'm like, well, just hold the date for us and we will find something. And so as we have this date, then I came across this book, and I was looking online for something else, and I was like, wow, Picturing Freedom, African Americans in Their Cars. That is so cool. I've always wanted to do something at the Gilmore Car Museum. And I'm like, maybe this could be what we do together. We can have the girls take pictures with the cars. So I ordered the book. I started going through it, and I saw all these images.
I'll take this part out while you do that.
And particularly, images of, Black women and girls. And I said, how cool would that be to take this and have the girls pick a girl or a woman that they would recreate the image. And so I emailed the author, Elizabeth Burns, her and her dad co-wrote this book, and they're out in New York, and they have the Burns Archive, which has, a great collection of different kinds of archives. And this was just one particular set of archives they had about African Americans in their cars. And so I emailed her, and I said, I have this nonprofit organization. I just found your book. I would love to talk to you about the possibility of having our girls recreate some of these images for an exhibition. That would happen in March. So, I have this March date, and this was like in September when I reached out to her. And the next day she called me back.
Wow.
And she was like, I love this. I was wondering how I could get this book and the story into younger people's hands and make it relevant. And I said, we can do this. And I said, if you give me permission, then I can go to the Gilmore Car Museum, who, they're one of the largest car museums in the world, and see if they would let the girls find the cars that match, and we would take the pictures. And so I went to Nick, who's the director of the Gilmore Car Museum. He saw the book, and he was like, let's do it.
Wow.
So everybody was just on board. And then Darrell McMillan, who we all know, who does photography and videography for our girls, he helped kind of orchestrate, everything that happened behind the scenes, taking the photos, setting up the scenes, and all that great stuff. And then we had the Kalamazoo Civic Theater, who gave some of the outfits for the girls, that matched the period. We had Katana James and her friends do all the cosmetics and hair. So we had a full production going on for a whole day at the Gilmore Car Museum, and the girls just had a blast.
They were lit up.
Yes.
They were so happy.
Yes.
So happy. I mean, dancing, getting their hair done, their makeup done, some of them standing on the cars. I remember someone saying, how did they get to stand on the cars?
Yes. And the cool thing about it was it wasn't just girls having fun, dressing up. They literally had to learn about African American women for 100 years, like from 1900s,
Yeah.
you know, and so they were learning the research. They were learning about the Green Book, which they had never heard of before. The Green Book is a book that was started in 1936 by a man named Victor Green to outline places that were safe for African Americans to go throughout the country as they were driving. So they learned about the Green Book. They learned about sundown towns. They learned about what Black women did, you know, as time progressed, you know, from being maids and servants and domestic workers to, you know, then being secretaries and educators and, you know, on and on and on. So they were able to see that whole transition of African American women and then appreciate it even more. And one of the girls said, she was like, we would never learn this stuff in school. Like, we've never learned this stuff in school. So even giving them that pride of African American women and their history, that was all behind the scenes that they were learning as we're seeing these beautiful images of the girls recreate these stories of these women in their pictures.
That's so beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
now, when you, because you've been doing this, you said did you say it's 20 years?
2008 we
2008.
started.
Okay, so it's
Yes.
like, is that 18 years? Something
Yeah,
like that?
so 2028 we'll be celebrating 20 years.
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. So then I have a question about like the girls past then. Like, are some of them, I mean, obviously grown up, right? So like, do they ever come back around and tell you stories or try and, you know, help out with this new group or like, you know, do you keep in touch with any
Every
of them?
now and then we do. A lot of our girls are doing so many great things that they are like traveling the world. They're all over the country. And, you know, they're just doing great things out in the world. So every now and then they'll come back and we'll have them talk about, you know, what they're doing. But, you know, we have one girl who, when she first came into the group, wanted to be an architect. And we gave her the camera because we were learning media and she was hooked. And now she's a photojournalist.
Wow.
We had one girl who learned about Merze Tate being a Fulbright scholar. And when she went to Spelman, she was like, I've heard of that. And she applied and became a Fulbright scholar in South America.
Wow.
We've had students who learned about Merze Tate's political activism. She wrote books on the annexation of Hawaii. She wrote books about the diamond mines in Africa, Australia, a lot of political books.
Yes.
And we have one of our students, Kyra Hudson, who went into, you know, political science and, you know, met Kamala Harris, you know, did some work at the White House. So they're learning different pieces of Merze Tate's life, and some gravitate to, you know, certain things, and they run with it because they saw that if this woman could do that, you know, back in, you know, the early 1900s, you know, now, you know, we have endless possibilities of things we can do today.
Yeah. So you're a journalist, or were a journalist, and so I'm curious about your career as a journalist because I feel like that really added to where you're at now.
Right.
I'm seeing, like, for example, when you talk about how I called this person, I got this person, they called me back the next, I was like, okay, that's a journalist.
Right?
Right? They're going to
Exactly.
get and talk about what they need to get done. They're getting it done, you know?
Exactly.
And I feel like that was just all like that side of you, right? In that. So yeah, share with me, how did you get into that?
I mean, and that's what people think about when they say like, wow, how do you get all these opportunities to do things? That journalism background does come into play because you have to learn how to be direct with people, how to say what you want, how to let them know why it benefits not only us, but them as well. And how I think one thing that's good about our program was that we were a media group. So people knew that there were going to be photos showed of what they did with us. We were going to take pictures with them. So they knew that it was more than just, you know, one-sided because we were advertising and highlighting what they did in the community as well. But that journalism background has served a great purpose in what I do. And it all started, like everything comes full circle, because when I was a kid, you know, we grew up with our social media being magazines, and they came in the mail. And so the Ebony and Jet magazines would come to my grandmother's house, and we would just like, everybody would open them up when they came and looking, oh, look at that dress. Oh, she's beautiful. Look at this. And you read the articles about their homes and, you know, all the stuff. And everybody's like, I want to be rich like that. I want to be a basketball player. And I would just like, I want to be whoever is meeting these people. Who's meeting these people and interviewing them and taking the photos? That's what I want to do. And as a fourth grader, you know, I didn't know what that meant. And around that time, my grandmother had got a Montgomery Ward's charge card. So if anybody remembers Montgomery Ward's, but it's like Sears and J.C. Penney's, and she maxed her card out to get me an electric typewriter.
Wow.
And I was in fourth grade, and I remember one of my aunts being so upset, like, you spent all that money on this kid. And my grandmother was like, I want her to be a secretary one day. So that was her dream for me. My grandmother hadn't finished 3rd grade. So for her to be able to, pour into me and invest into me at a young age meant so much to me. I didn't realize it at the time, but I learned how to type. I typed everybody's stuff in the family, whoever needed things typed. I ended up learning about the Pulitzer Prize in elementary school from my teacher, Tom Hansen. And I was like, I want to win a Pulitzer Prize. And he started talking about journalism and being a reporter. And that's when it stuck. I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so in elementary school, junior high, high school, I was always on any newsletter or, yearbook staff. I was the editor of the yearbook, newspapers. And that was my path. I even went to the Kalamazoo Gazette in high school and did an internship. I wrote a story about what the class of 1986 was expecting in their futures. And it ran in the paper. So early on, I had people who mentored me, who encouraged me, who never said, no, you can't do that. And this pushed me out there. One of my teachers gave me a scholarship to Olivet College. They had a summer journalism program for students of color. And I met all these amazing reporters of color from Detroit Free Press, Saginaw, Lansing, all over. And it just validated, yes, I can do this. I can be in this world. And so that was my path. I wanted to become a journalist. And after high school, I applied to all these colleges, and I didn't get accepted to any of them.
Really?
I didn't get accepted to any of them because my grade point average was too low.
Okay.
So while I did great in my English classes and all that, I didn't focus on math and science because I'm like, I don't need that. I'm writing for the local paper. I don't need that. And no one had really gone to traditional college before, so no one had said get your ACT, SAT. I didn't
it's
have
hard
any,
being the first in that way,
right? I didn't have that background. No one knew how to. My mother said you're going to college, but she didn't really have. She went to college. She went to KVCC and became a nurse. But that traditional college out of high school, she really didn't know how to put me on that path. And so, as my friends were going off to college, I was like, I'm leaving, and I went into the military, and that was interesting. And time went on, I ended up getting pregnant.
Well, how many years were you in the military before you got pregnant?
So when I first went in, I did my basic training, AIT, your job, and then I went over to Germany, and then I got pregnant. And I was like,
what branch of the military?
An Army.
Oh, you were in the Army.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and
Did you get pregnant with someone that lived in Germany?
Well, he was someone I met in our training.
Asking.
Yeah, he was someone I met in training.
Oh, okay.
And then he went over to Germany, and so I went over there with goals to stay there, and got pregnant, and it was like, no, this isn't me. So I ended up, getting into the reserves and went to KVCC, went there, and went into journalism. That was my focus, to really get back into it. I was an opinion editor of the Tower Times newspaper at KVCC, traveled to Washington, D.C. with the newspaper staff. I was doing the Black student, what do we call it? African American Student Council. I was president there, and then went on to Western and worked for the Western Herald. So things just kept, they kind of snowballed. I was a single parent doing all this on welfare and just trying to get through school as fast as I could so I can get a real job and, take care of my son. Yeah. So it was a challenge. It was very hard. But when I graduated, I did an internship. The 2 days after I graduated from Western, I started an internship in Akron at the Beacon Journal. And I wrote this book and interviewed all these musicians. And it was amazing. And people kept saying, wow, who published your book? And so it's my husband, Sean, and I did it together. And so after that, we started Season Press to help people self-publish. So, we wrote books. We help other people, wrote hundreds of books. We've helped people self-publish. And so the journalism still kind of always stayed there. The writing always kind of stayed with me. I went to the Gazette, and that's after I left the Inquirer, after that book, I went to the Gazette, and that's when I learned about the African Americans of Western and that whole process, a story about Merze Tate. And then they eventually were sold by MLive. And so they just let go of a lot of reporters, and, I was one of them. And so we had to kind of reinvent yourself. And around that time, there was a couple in town called Arlene Washington.
Okay.
They owned the paper called Community Voices. And they approached my husband, Sean, and I to take over Community Voices. And we turned it into a magazine. So we turned it into the magazine. And at the same time, I'm starting the Merze Tate Explorers. And we eventually had the Explorers use the magazine as their outlet to share about the people that they met and the places that they went. So Community Voices kind of morphed into a youth publication, at the same time. So everything kind of was working together to highlight the girls and what they were doing and giving them that opportunity to be highlighted on a magazine. We have these young Black girls who are on the cover, and they're traveling and doing all these great things and writing about them. So everything, from that, seeing the magazine at my grandmother's house, actually happened to create a magazine and highlight young girls of color. It's just like all coming full circle. It's amazing.
What is there like a point of like your life or your upbringing that makes you feel like you want to be in service and in recognition and a leader and someone who paves a path for other people, especially the youth? Like, have you like looked into that within yourself and like, why is this something I love? Like,
Yeah, I don't think that was something in my family. Like, people didn't volunteer, you didn't do anything for free, and you didn't have any money to give people anything.
Yeah.
But I believe my teacher, my elementary school teacher, Tom Hansen, he was very instrumental in how he taught kids to think outside the box. I mean, we were doing yoga in this, in class.
That's cool.
And we were, going to the nature center in the winter and looking at the footprints in the snow and like, what animal is that?
Yeah.
And we would have to go out with our parents at night and look at the stars. So I think growing up with a teacher who just lets you see so many possibilities.
Yeah.
And our classroom was very diverse at Lincoln Elementary School, and there was nothing that we could not do. And I remember one time he said, we were doing trick or treat for UNICEF. I don't know if you remember back in the day that you did trick or treating and you had a little box, and if you put change in the box when you trick or treated to raise money for the kids in Africa or whatever. And I remember him showing us a video, and he asked us, before he showed us the film, he said, who in here is poor and who is rich? And so the Black kids, most of us were like, yeah, we're poor. We live on the north side, whatever. And the white kids were like, okay, yeah, I'm rich. And some, it was mixed. And he showed us this film of these students in Africa who were, hungry or whatever. And then after the film, he said, now who in here is poor? And it totally changed your perspective. Like, I am not poor.
Yeah.
So even having that kind of teacher or someone who's making you realize you have everything that you need. You are not poor.
Yeah.
You are not, whatever somebody's thinking you are. You are whatever you want to, and you can whatever you create yourself to be. And so I think by me having that foundation of someone who didn't put limits on their students, and just say you can be whatever you want to be.
That is so huge. I remember when I was a child, and I grew up in a neighborhood where it was like, there was a lot of my friends and different people that did not have certain things. And at times we didn't have certain things, right? And so, but one thing that stood out as to like, I'm like, why, when I look back, what was it that made me know that I can have everything and get everything and be anything? And I realized my mom always had us around like different types of people and seeing different types of things. And then I started making different types of friends. And then I would go over their houses and see that everyone lived differently. And so, I recognize what you're doing, because it's like once, you can have a circumstance that you're born into, but the minute your eyes open to something, there's no going back. That if you just make it through this period in time, that you can then go and make anything of your life, because you've seen, beyond your own household.
Right.
And that's why I believe that, people, sometimes I feel like a lot of people, if they don't move somewhere other than where they've grown up, they get stuck. And not everybody, but I've witnessed it in so many people I've met, because I've moved, so many places. And I see that, people are like, they don't travel, they haven't been somewhere, they haven't moved somewhere, because it's like you're taking, the ground is out underneath you. You don't have mom's house to go to, you don't have cousins, you don't have the friends you grew up with. You're just like, this is like, if you can make it, what is that saying about New York? If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Right.
That's the same thing, like if you go anywhere, right?
Right.
So what you're doing, and what Merze Tate did, and I get it. Like, I think that is incredible.
Yeah, and she traveled the world twice. I mean, she spoke
2
different
times.
languages.
Wow.
And so when we first met, we had the girls find 20 places around the world they would want to visit one day. And we've traveled to several of those places, and some of our girls have gone through those places even without us as they've grown up or gone to college. But you're right. When someone sees it as possible, then there's no limits. Because when we would go to Japan with the girls, as soon as we land, they're like, where are we going next? It's like their minds were just like, there's no limit. But if you never have those limits taken off of you, even when I first started the program, they were like, you're not going to be able to take girls around the world. You don't have any money. You don't. And there are people who saw the vision and they poured into that to give those opportunities. So, once they saw that they could get a passport and travel, it was on. One of our students is in Vietnam right now working for the Peace Corps teaching. So once they see it, the possibility
can't be unseen.
Is right.
It's endless.
Exactly.
I love that so much.
Thank you.
Well, what are some things that are really important to you right now in your heart that you're excited about in your life, in the Merze Tate, and just everything that you have going on? Like, what excites you right now?
I mean, I think, there's so many different layers of my life, but, we come back to when I was a single parent and, when I received that first job, real job, I asked my son what did he want for his birthday, and he said he wanted piano lessons. And so I got him piano lessons, and today he lives in New York, and he's basically been able to survive because he's a pianist, and he had a #1 album on Billboard classical charts.
Wow.
He went to Western. He was one of the first group of the Kalamazoo Promise. They were the first group to get that. So he's doing amazing. I have a daughter who's at DePaul University going into psychology. My son Shamil works with my husband Sean at his print shop, and then my daughter Sasha is going into education, and Edward is actually getting a master's degree in education in New York as well.
So cool. And I met 2 of your kids. Like, they're amazing. You did a good job, Mom.
Thank you. But I mean, you think about it as all those things were going on from 2008, and all the things that were going on in my life with my own family. I was still kind of juggling this other world with these girls and my family as well. And so I'm proud on both fronts of how they just found their wings and just. They're just flying.
So what was the job you got to get them piano lessons?
That was a Battle Creek Inquirer. That was the first job.
That was that one. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So once I got that, it was on, and he was in piano, lessons all his life and competitions and doing great things and traveling the world himself. As a musician. So
cool.
Yeah.
So
cool. If there's anything when you're saying how do you encourage and inspire people, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different challenges and limitations. But as we were saying, when you see the possibilities, then, and you have your mindset, nobody's holding you back but yourself.
Yep.
At that point, there could be people who don't believe in you. They may not support you. But if you believe it in your heart and you just stay focused, like there's no limits. Because, think about this. I went from a young girl who just learned about, the Pulitzer Prize in typing to now having an exhibition of girls who's maybe going around the world. We don't know what's going to happen with this, but the possibility, I see it as possible.
That's incredible.
Yeah, she's
that
amazing.
is incredible. What a legacy.
Right. And the interesting thing about her is before she died, she had dementia. And, you think about that and how hard it is to realize a woman who did all those things in her life. Not only did she not have any kids and, any, nieces or nephews or anybody to really be with her, she had, people who were living with her, maids and people who didn't really know her or appreciate her for, her life and what she had lived. And for her to have died and she had a heart attack. So, you hear about someone who has such an amazing life, an amazing story, and then they died basically almost with no one even knowing who they were. And for us to be able to bring her story to life, I think it's incredible. And like you said, that legacy will continue with the girls who were in the program, and they continue to build on that legacy and build on the possibilities. And her name and her legacy will continue to move on and on through them.
So when you look at your life today, did you ever think it would be like this?
It's interesting because I went to talk to some students at the juvenile home. And when I came in, I didn't say who I was, what I did, and I said, read me. So I asked the students, read me. Like, tell me, who am I? Where did I come from? What is my background, education? What does my family look like? And they were like, you grew up in a 2-parent household and probably on the west side of Kalamazoo, and your parents were professionals and blah, blah, blah. You went to college. And I was like, everything you said was wrong. And because of that, now you can look at your life and not say, because I started here, this is where I have to be. You can look at me and say, she started there, and look at where she is.
Yep.
So never feel like because I started at a certain place, people expect you to stay there. And so I always tell them there's circumstances and there's consequences.
Yeah.
You can be born in a circumstance that you can't control, but there are consequences for your actions that you can control. So there are things that you have to learn.
Explained.
You have to learn in life. Like, is this a circumstance that I have to figure out how to navigate through that I didn't put myself in or I can't control? Or are these the consequences of my own actions? And that's when you have to realize this is how my path is going to go in life. You know, you have to be responsible for the consequences of your actions and the things that you do. And so when I look at my life now and I see the hills and valleys, you know, I saw the great things I was doing as a young reporter in high school. And then I saw, you know, going to the military and becoming a single parent and being on welfare and even working at a restaurant when I was pregnant and slipping and falling while I was pregnant. And no one helped me. No one helped me. Yeah, it was devastating. And so it gets you to that point where you're learning, you know, I have to do better in my life. This is not where I'm going to be forever. This is just a detour or a path or a learning experience. I think a lot of times we don't see things as learning experiences. We see them as failures, and they're not. They're just a way for you to look at it and say, okay, what am I going to learn from this? How am I not going to get in this situation again? And how am I going to pull myself out of it and learn from it and teach someone else who may need that? I saw a young woman crying one time in church, and she was a few pews ahead of me, and I was watching her, and I just saw her crying, and she got up to leave, like she just like couldn't take it, and I got up and I walked out, and I stopped her, and I was like, you know, what's going on? Do you need to talk?
Yeah.
And she just couldn't even talk. She was just crying, and I said, I've been there. I said, I've been there where I cried so much I couldn't even tell anybody what I was crying about. It was just so devastating. I said, so I prayed with her. But once you go through things in life, you're able to recognize other people and what they're going through. And you're not just saying, well, I got mine. You're like, no. Your
heart was broken so bad, you couldn't bear to have someone else in front of you and just watch theirs break like that.
Exactly.
You want to step in.
Right. Because there were times when I fell and no one was there to pick me up. Literally.
It does something,
You know, literally, I'm sitting there pregnant and I'm falling and no one's there to pick me up. They're actually acting like they didn't even see me fall.
Yeah.
And so what happened was the next day I came into work and the manager pulled me aside. He was like, I heard you fell yesterday. And I'm like, that's interesting because nobody even acknowledged that I fell. And he said, okay, I'm putting you on the register. Because I probably could have sued him,
Oh, yeah.
But he put me on the register and he was like, you don't lift anything, you don't move, you don't do anything, you know? So he did at least have some compassion to say, you know, hey, you need to be careful what you're doing. And, you know, but it just really is evident in life that you're going to go through hills and valleys.
Yeah.
And how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to react to it? And sometimes we're learning things not for ourselves, it's for other people that God wants us to intervene with or, you know, do things in their life. There's things that go on with the students I work with. And I'm able to, you know, understand what their parents are going through or their mom is going through. And I'm able to not only, you know, empathize, but to say, okay, what can I do to help? This is what I can do to help. So, you know, life is a journey. People always say that, but you're not on a journey by yourself. You're on a journey to find out what am I learning or what am I doing that's going to benefit somebody else. And Merze Tate was on this amazing journey and didn't have any kids to share it with, a husband, and her legacy is living on, her journey is living on through us, even though we never met her, even though she never met the girls. So who's to say years down the line what these young girls would do that they will impact some other people that, and maybe there are people who I may impact, who I may never know and never see and never touch.
Beautiful. So I'm curious. So you are doing things with the Merze Tate Explorers often. So I'm sure you do tons of fun activities. And I mean, does anything ever like did any trip or any like activity that you guys have done together remind you of like your childhood or make you maybe like you were acting like a kid out with them, like bouncing in the bouncy houses or you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It's funny because when I travel with the students, I'm I'm on chaperone duty, but at the same time, it's kind of like you have all these little girlfriends with you that is giving you permission to be a kid and do some cool things like climbing, you know, the rock walls and all that kind of stuff. But one interesting thing is we went to Hawaii and with the girls, and they were swimming. And I was so jealous because I can't swim. And so last summer, I told a friend of mine I couldn't swim, and she's like, I can't either. And they have a pool in the yard. Like, how do you not know how to swim and you have a pool? So her husband is teaching us how to swim. So my dream is to jump off of a waterfall. Like that is on my bucket list. I want to go to like some island.
Will you take me? Well, if not,
I'll take you and you can record it. And do some
Okay.
video. Yeah, we can jump off.
Because I'm probably going to say I'll jump with you and probably
you won't do it. It doesn't be a big waterfall.
My daredevil days were my I went skydiving when I was like 22 for I think it was my 22nd birthday. I went skydiving.
Oh, wow.
And it was great and it was awful all at the same time. Cause like literally I was with like 3 or 4 friends and it was really at this really cool place. We stayed overnight, learned and everything. And then all of a sudden they got us in our gear. We're getting ready to go up and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, so the heaviest one has to go first, so you don't slam and like kill the person, with all your weight, right?
Goodness.
That's probably, I'm just, thinking, common sense, right? So my friends turned because I'm a little thick,
Okay.
So they all looked at me and started laughing, and I was just like, screw you guys. I was like, man,
right.
Really? Okay, fine. Here we go, So then, and mind you, we didn't go tandem. We decided to go, it's called static line. So when you do static line, you jump out and they pull it right as you jump out. So you don't have any free fall. Now that's supposed to be, could be less scary for some, because it opens up immediately.
Right.
However, you're alone, number one.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's with you to save the day,
Wow.
so maybe you're not free falling, and you are like, when you're done, you think, oh, I could, I want to go, I didn't free fall, but you're never going to probably go and jump out of a plane again, usually. But anyway, so I'm over there on the thing, jumped out, right? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. This is great. It was great. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, in my ear, because it's walkie-talkie, they're like, okay, now grab your brakes because you don't want to break your legs when you land.
Oh, boy.
And I'm like, okay, let me, because you won't die, but your legs will break.
Wow.
So I reach up and I'm reaching up and then all of a sudden I can't reach the brakes. And I'm like, I can't reach the brakes.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like, not telling me nothing, because what are they going to tell me? They don't know what to tell me. And they just got quiet. Nobody told me nothing after I said that, right?
What?
So I was like, well, on my own. And I just did I imagine Stretch Armstrong, those little gummy, or what are those Gumby things. And I was just like, stretch. And I just stretch, and I grabbed those brakes and I got it just in time and I reached the bottom. And then when I get to the bottom, there's this other guy who's coming down with the instructor. And I don't know what was going on in the air. It just looked weird when they were landing, right? They land, and then the guy unattaches from him because they did tandem. And he's kissing, we're in the desert. He's kissing the desert ground. Like, thank you. And then he goes and jumps up and hugs the tandem guy that was on his back that saved him. And the guy that saved him, the instructor, was like frozen like this. And apparently the chute was tied up in knots or didn't open or something. So he had to figure out how to get the backup chute to work. And so even though they're instructors, they're still humans. They're like, I'm responsible for my life and theirs. That's got to be scary. So the guy's like, thank you. Yeah, I'm alive. But the guy, he was like, just stunned. So for me, that was like in the sky before all of that happened, where I had to reach the brakes, was like one of the best moments of my life. I'll never forget how that feels. It's just like you and God or like nothing. Like it's, I mean, I might actually go again one day. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had. However, on the drive home, I was like, I could have died. I'm never doing that again. I could have died. What was wrong with us? And to say that at 22 years old when you're adventurous, says a lot.
Wow. So that sounds fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So when you jump off the waterfall now,
Right. I have that moment of freedom.
I will be your videographer. I will be your, I'll get you a little B-roll with my cell phone and stuff.
Right.
But I don't, and I may just jump with you, but I don't think so.
Well, you did out the sky. I'm just doing like a little waterfall. That'll be a big one.
There's
just
rocks
enough.
down there though.
Right.
It's all like, I'm scared of bungee jumping because I don't want to go head first on something and then my head cracks open. I'd rather my legs crack, not my head. I'd rather none of it. But you know what I mean? If I had to choose.
Right. You're thinking like head or feet. You're right.
Head or feet. I'll take the feet,
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
But that's my thing. Like being with the girls, having fun, but then on my own just to do that. That's like a bucket list.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. No Niagaras though.
Nah. We've been to Niagara Falls and it's like, whoa.
Yeah,
like,
we're not barreling down.
Not doing that. Not doing that. Just enough. Because when I was in elementary school, I went to Pretty Lake Camp. Okay. And when you get to Pretty Lake Camp, they would throw you off the dock because, how do you swim? You get scared and you start moving. Well, I didn't. They had to come and get me because I just sunk like a rock. And so I was always terrified of swimming.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I could like jump off a waterfall. Like in my mind, I could do it. And people would try to teach me how to swim. And I wasn't like afraid of the water. It's just I could not float.
Wow.
And I don't know what it was, but when I started taking lessons this past summer, it's like, okay, I'm getting the hang of it. I'm getting the rhythm. And I'm just seeing myself jumping off that waterfall. So
cool.
Be on the lookout.
Okay, no, I want to be involved in this. I want you to share books and stuff that you find about the waterfall that you're thinking of, and because you research stuff, so you're gonna find a pretty cool spot. I'm sure. I want to hear about it before you go.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the work you've done and the work you're continuing to do, and just being so dedicated to it, and inspiring all these good young girls and me and many of us out there. So where can people find you and donate, bring ideas for what the girls can do, come to you and ask how they can help? What do you need? Just to have a conversation with you. Like how do you want someone to be able to reach out to you?
So if they go to merzetate.org and then just push contact, you can email me. We have donate buttons on there. You can kind of keep up to date with all the things that we're doing as well. So, it's I'm easy to find on Facebook, LinkedIn. Sonya Bernard-Hollins. So we'll do it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Sandbox friends, that's it for today. In the meantime, head on over to the Sandbox Collective Podcast.com. And also, make sure you check out our information in the description or the show notes all about our sponsors and our guests below. See you next time.